Hello and welcome. Let me go ahead and get recording turned on and we will get this show on the road. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining me today for Kineo Totara office hours. Today we are going to dive a little bit deeper into version 12. In our session last time, we talked about the whole version 12 as a whole. So we kind of pointed out all the different pieces of the system that you had to look forward to coming up in the near future. But we are going to go through and kind of over the next couple of weeks in different office hour sessions, we're going to be talking about each of those big new features individually. Probably the largest change that's going to maybe kind of make some of our site administrators go, whoa, that's different, is going to be the site administration menu. So it's taken us a minute to kind of start getting used to it, but we're getting there, and it's got its pros. So we will take a look at that in a little more detail today. A little bit about myself in case you don't know me already. My name is Taylor Craig. I'm the Senior Platforms Consultant here at Kineo. So my job entails I train current clients, new clients, and old clients all alike. So I do any kind of core training, and then if you have any customizations on your site, I train on those customizations as well as provide the documentation to go with them. So that's a little bit about my role. So let's talk about what exactly has changed. So it's no longer located in a block. In older versions, we got really used to that site administration menu being over typically, depending on your theme, but it was typically over on the left side of the screen, and it was contextual, right? It would change based on the screen you were looking at. That's going to change in version 12 just slightly, but it's going to look a lot different. It's located now in the very top of the screen, in that they're calling it the top navigation now, but basically what we used to call the main menu area. It's going to show up there. However, one of the really nice things about it is it's now configurable, and it's configurable per admin, which is also nice. We'll take a look at that as well. I want to also today point out sub-menus on different administrative pages. So there was a lot of thought that went into this, you can tell, because when you're on a particular page, it gives you related sub-pages, but then it also gives you also pages that you may need to be jumping to from the page that you're currently on. So an example of that would be like on the users page, kind of has some suggested other additional pages around audiences, things like that. Okay, so we're going to take a look at that. And then you also have an add to admin menu drop down, and you have a remove from admin menu drop down. We'll talk about what the purpose is of those. So without further ado, let's get into a version 12 site. Your admin menu, again, used to be located down here. Now you do still see the administration on a per page basis typically. So like here you have the front page settings, which would be expected. We're on the front page here. But all of our other settings now are located here. Couple of things to be aware of. So in the old version, and actually it just occurred to me, I don't know why I didn't think about this when I was planning, but it would probably be nice to see an old version in comparison. So give me just a second. You know what, we'll use Training Hub because it's still on version 11. And then it also gives you exposure to Training Hub again, which we will be upgrading Training Hub soon to version 12. Let me get logged in. We'll take a look here. Okay, so in the past, our administration menu looked like so. Drops down. Notice how here we have the big headers: users, hierarchy, seminars, courses, grades, badges, so on and so forth. In the new version, those major headers are these things that we're seeing here, right? But they've broken them down a little bit differently. They've grouped them in 4 main categories: core platform, learning, performance, and configuration. So core platform, those are going to be things that you use typically all the time. So users, audiences, permissions around user roles, things like that. Organizations, hierarchies, badges, competencies, reports. So those may be things that you use frequently. But you may also find, I don't use any of those ever, right? So we'll talk about how you can configure this. You have all the things that deal with learning. So going into courses and categories, things that you're maybe going to use there. Performance, that's going to be any of the performance things that are in the system, such as appraisals, 360 feedback, things like that. And then also additional configuration, things that are kind of one-time fixes, things that you go in, you configure it once, and you're basically done. You may check on it from time to time, but it's typically in that first round of configuration. You're not generally going to look back at those things. Okay, so you look at this and think, all right, that's all fine and well. I don't use competencies, or I don't use badges. I don't want that on mine. Okay, so under here you have an area that says menu settings. And what you can do, what this does is this brings you to the edit screen. Now, one thing I want to point out, this is per administrator. So I'm in as an admin user, but if I had a secondary admin that was on the site, if they came in, they wouldn't see the menu how I see it. They would see it how they have configured it to see it for them. Because if you have multiple administrators, you may divide and conquer on your site, and you may have different things that each of you work on specifically. So in that case, that comes in really handy, being able to configure it appropriately. So say you don't use competencies. Get rid of it. It's okay. You can come back in. You can add it back if you'd like to. Now, on each of these different areas, you have the area where you can add a menu item. This looks awfully familiar, right? This drop down. This looks like what we've grown accustomed to. It looks like the same administration menu that we know. So you can add any of these different ones. So if user profile fields might be something that you use frequently, you can pop that in there. Okay. You can also reorder these. That's what these arrows do. You can move them around. If you call it something different, maybe you call positions something else, or you call organization something else. You can come in, you can rename it, and it will appear in that menu how you know it, right? Okay, so that's something that's nice. Another thing you can do, you can completely delete an entire section. So if you don't want to use that section at all, you're never going to use it, you can get rid of it. If you want to reset this menu back to how it was, you can click Reset Admin Menu. It'll take away all of your configurations, but it will put it back to the way they had it. You also have the ability to add your own group. So if you have something like, maybe there's things you use all the freaking time. You don't use it just every now and then, but you use it every single day. You could call that frequent use, or call it whatever you want to. And then you can come in here, you can add that menu item. So if I use browse list of users all the time, I may use audiences all the time. Let's see, thinking of something else. I may use reports all the time, and I'm always needing to access the embedded reports. That's what I'm always going after. So I can add in everything that I want to use, and I can move the entire group up. So that way, it appears first in my menu. You may have to give it a minute. I'm going to go ahead and refresh. So now you'll start seeing those things show up over here. Okay, so that's going to be a really nice feature of it, that you can place everything that you use every single day. You can put it right there front and center where it's easy for you to get. One other nice thing that I really like about this, so if we look at our old version, down here at the bottom of the site administration menu, you have the search in settings. And as you're aware, you could type in the word quiz and it would pull back anywhere in all of those settings. It would pull back everything dealing with quiz. You still have that functionality, and it's actually, to me, a little bit easier to access, because now it's right here. You just come up, boom, it's right there. So it's not, you're not having to scroll to the bottom of the screen and dig around and look for something. It's right there. It still works the same. The functionality of that box has not changed one bit. So still works the same, still does everything that you know and love. Now, another thing I want to point out, though, guys, is I know a lot of people have told me, man, you know, I really got used to this menu, and I got used to knowing that audiences were under accounts, audiences, and they just kind of were like a homing pigeon. They would just go, and they knew exactly where to go on this menu. And some of these, one thing I want to point out, guys, is on the new one, some of these things aren't just on that menu like they are here. So like audiences, well, I'm trying to think of one that may not just be right there. For instance, define roles. That's something I use a lot with several of my clients. Now I'm administering sites a bit differently than maybe you are administering sites. But with several of my clients, a lot of times I'm going in and I'm defining particular roles. So I would probably add this particular drop down. I would add this to my admin view. But this isn't just necessarily by default, assuming I can find it. You'll see it's not just by default on here. So I would either have to go in and go to menu settings and add it, or another thing that you can do, so I'm going to click on users. All of those different things are here. There is now a block called admin sub-navigation. So I want to point this out, and I want it to be very aware of this particular menu. So when you're on an administrative page, in this case we're on the Browse List of Users screen, you're going to have an admin sub-navigation block. You don't want to change the visibility on this block because then you won't have it anymore. It is an admin-only block, or people who have a role where they should see some form of administration. So it could be a role that you have configured specifically for your site. There is a particular permission that is listed in the Totara documentation. I thought I had that pulled up and I don't see it. I will add that to the comments on the video. There is a specific permission in a role that you may have to give them to be able to see this admin sub-navigation block, but that's okay. So just be aware of that might be something you have to add in. Another block that's really nice that I really like is they have a related pages block. So this one's also a really nice block because if you think about it, when you're looking at your list of users, you may need to go look at your HR import data. You may need to look at audiences. You may need to look at permissions for different people. So it does give you a nice, neat little direct link. Another button I want to point out is right here. Remove from admin menu. So if you see remove from admin menu, that means that it is on your admin menu somewhere. You may have added it. It may be something that's already on there by default. But if you want to remove that from admin, if you say, you know what, I never used that, that's kind of a cluttered page, and I don't want it. It just kind of makes it easier for you so that you can go through the site and go to the pages that you're familiar with and you know, and then you can add them as well. So here, I can also say, oh, you know what, I need to add that, but I don't want to go all the way back to menu settings, blah, 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 right? So you can just come here, you can say add to menu item, and you can create a new group off of this, which is nice, but you can also throw that into the frequent use section, and then it shows up there. Okay, so just something to be aware of, just something to know that it's there. It's a really nice feature as well of that. So it makes the usability much easier, and actually, as I've gotten used to it, I like it more and more. The only thing that I could see it being slightly cumbersome for in the front end, and I think it's just going to be getting used to it, is when I'm initially configuring a site. But fortunately, that's something we do for you a lot of times, so that's not something you're going to have to do. We kind of already know where a lot of that stuff is, so we're not going to have to hunt and peck for it. We can just search, which is really nice. So thank you so much for joining me today. That is all I have for you today. And I'm going to throw that slide up there and then turn it over to you guys and see if there are any questions.